Welcome back to the Vintage Vibe, where we'll take a look at part 2 of the Sansui AU-7700, our review and final impressions of this classic amplifier. So let's get intimate with Sansui's little amp that could. So welcome back, and thanks for joining us for part 2 of the review of Sansui's AU-7700. Now, in the early 70s, Sansui really was at the top of their game. I mean, they were producing some powerhouses like the AU-1100 integrated amplifier, or some of their big dog receivers like the G33,000 that was so big it had to get put together in 2 pieces, or the G9000. I mean, these really are golden era pieces of hi-fi, some of Sansui's best. Now, the AU-7700 might seem like a far cry from some of those, but I think you're already getting the idea after watching part 1 that this really was quite a piece of equipment. Now, we're going to wrap up things with looking at some of the features. We're going to talk a little bit about what to expect if you do buy one, how much you could expect to spend to get one, how it sounds, which is an important one, as well as whether or not it deserves a place in your vintage audio collection. I really do think this is one of the better looking units out of the era. I love the black face. I mean, it's a nicely machined face. And then you've got these, really well put together aluminum knobs and then the stark white finishing. It's a handsome looking unit. And feature-wise, you've got provisions for 2 speakers, and then right here, Sansui's triple threat, the triple tone control. You've got so many adjustments to tweak your sound, and then head right over here and crank up the volume because you've got about 55 watts of old school power, quality sound. Adjust your input, adjust your loudness contour, sit back in your favorite chair and relax because this is all the amp you need. Now, I didn't say all the amp you want, but with properly selected components and the right speakers, you'll be probably pretty surprised with the performance of this amp. Now let's take a little closer look at some more of the features. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there's a mode switch. That's probably not going to be used much nowadays. That's your kind of mono and stereo operation or reverse. The second thing is your muting, which I do use time to time, negative 30 or 15 dB mute. And your loudness, which is great for late night sessions with a low boost or low and high frequency boost. Talking about frequency, here's your triple tone controls, bass, mid-range, and treble with their own selectable crossover points, as well as low and high pass filters. Right behind the volume control, you have your balance control, and the amplifier is pretty well balanced left to right channel to start, which is great. You've got your tape selector switches, as well as input selector, which will include a total of 2 phono inputs. And how does it sound? Well, I mean, it sounds pretty sweet. It's got a great mid-range, and it's got a lot of full body presence to it. Distortion is low. It has a pretty convincing soundstage and made it with the right speakers, and boy are you in for a treat. Level with you. At first, I really didn't think I liked it much. I mean, I thought the amplifier was maybe over accentuating the mid-range. It was maybe overblown, a little too euphonic, a little too velvety in that respect. And then I started to think, what's wrong? Because sometimes synergy is everything in audio. And the speakers I had it connected to were a pair of Wharfdale Dentons, the reissued speakers. Now, as you can imagine, these were a small bookshelf speaker, which normally focuses a little bit more in the mid-range frequency. I mean, they have to. You just don't have the big displacement. You don't have the big cabinet, the big woofer. And in fact, they usually have a mid-range bump to make you think they're producing more bass than they really are. So you have an amplifier that's probably voiced more in the mid-range, a little sweeter, and you got a pair of speakers that are also emphasizing the mid-range. No wonder why it was too much. So we connected the Sansui next to a pair of Klipsch Heresy 3s and things got a little bit better. And then finally, connecting them to these Allison Acoustic Model 1s, I mean, that's really where things got great. And in fact, I think I might be in love with the little amp.
So, what exactly can you expect to pay for one of these Sansuis? Right about now, anywhere between $400 to $600 in Canadian dollars in 2020 is probably reasonable. Now, we've already talked about some of the things to look out for, including, well, bad solder joints and relays and all that sort of stuff. But all in all, I think it's a real winner.
Yes, it does, in my opinion, deserve a place in your vintage audio collection. In fact, in anybody's vintage audio collection. I mean, it's a great looking unit from the golden era of hi-fi. I mean, it's quality built with a full metal jacket. It's got all that Sansui sweetness, you know, maybe with a little less wattage than the big dogs, but it's got all that same magical sound to it. And because you're going to spend that much less getting, for example, an AU-7700, you'll be able to try a different couple pairs of speakers because you'll have a few extra, dollars in your pocket to do that. And that's really sometimes where that magic takes place, is finding the right connection, the right synergy between the amplifier and the speakers, so on and so forth. So again, thanks for joining us today on the Vintage Vibe, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for joining.